Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Fantastic. Well, welcome to Transitional Thinking. My intention with this presentation is to plant some seeds, as it were, in your minds in regards to our current values, methods and behaviours and how they correlate to the safety, security, happiness and freedom of life on the planet as a whole. As I'm sure a great number of you will know, when communicating about a resource-based economic model, the most frequent and persistent question we receive is, how do we get from here to there? And it is, of course, a very important question, and it is my hope here today to add another string to your bow, as it were, so you can each start your own journey along that path and help others along their own. Just to gauge an insight, who here would consider themselves aligned with the train of thought that we advocate in the Zeitgeist movement? Fantastic. At least I know I'm in the right place. Yeah. The meeting at the abandoned warehouse is next week, guys. Just saying that. Okay. Who here is vaguely familiar, or maybe has some questions bubbling up? Couple, yep. Healthy skepticism, guys. That's good. Keep it going. Okay, and who here was dragged here while having no concept at all of what this is all about? It's okay, guys. Don't need to be shy. Couple, all right. Well, rest assured, guys, this presentation is mainly for you and for those with questions as well. While I completely understand your discomfort, unfamiliarity, and perhaps even boredom, it is my hope to target this mainly for you. Documentary filmmaker and Hyrosonic frontman Ben Stewart once said, "Trillions of cells make up a single organism called the human body, and billions of human bodies help make up the organism we call Earth." We should keep this in mind at all times, considering our interconnectedness or symbiosis with everything around us. The very atoms that make up our bodies are also present in the furthest stars in this galaxy. As such, we should consider ourselves as both a macrocosm and a microcosm of the universe itself, for we are within it, and it is within us. This realization is, as you may find, actually diametrically opposed to our established views, beliefs, and thought patterns. We consider ourselves separate from each other, separate from nature, and everything else. This mentality serves to do just that. And this planet, which helps sustain our lives, is neglected. And if we expect to survive and also thrive on this planet, we need to really move away from these separatist notions. We are all in this together. Certain cultures, which we tend to call primitive, did not abuse, exploit, and destroy their natural environment, unlike modern so-called civilization. Instead, they lived in harmony with it. They took what they needed and no more, while giving back at the same time, taking every care not to cause negative retroactions. They did this because of one main understanding. If they protected and preserved nature, nature would continue to protect and preserve them. By the end of this presentation, it is my hope to demonstrate that while we pride ourselves on what we can do and what we are, mainly through our use of technology and science, we are actually becoming more, as the result of our values, the real primitive culture. And through this demonstration, provide an interactive exploration of what is right on the course of us achieving the ability to call ourselves civilized. Ever since I joined the movement, I find that while presenting the material from time to time, there tends to be a general agreement with the direction, but of a lack of enthusiasm to help it along, or even pass it on themselves. Almost as though it is too much of a quantum leap from their current values. I began to think that for these people, it seemed that a train of thought was a little too foreign, and they would require a bridge of sorts to see a path, as it were, to align with the train of thought that we are aligned with in the movement, So as a result, I began to think of certain elements of our culture and our values that really stuck out as corrosive, detrimental, hypocritical, obsolete, inhibitive, or all of the above, and group all of these together with a common goal of remedying these social and value-orientated ills. Right now, I'm going to quickly run down a series of many examples of these value system distortions. We love these, don't we? We have women's weekly magazines, or as I prefer to affectionately refer to them, gossip rags, contributing towards the continual dumbing down of its readers and the perpetuation of superficial and actually rubbernecking values. It seems that the human mind is nowadays somehow not deserving of something that stretches and stimulates it anymore. We have pop music, which is there merely to make money over and over again in a disposable fashion, keeping society only thinking within a narrow band of sex, money, image, and relationship troubles. And we wonder why our mainstream culture has been mentally tunnel-visioned. We have the celebrity cult of personality mentality, where famous people are deified merely for being in the spotlight. This, as you can imagine, causes ordinary people like you or me to feel inadequate by comparison. There used to be a time when people were famous for being talented, virtuous, highly achieving, or the like. Now people are being treated as though they are those things merely for being famous. We have programs such as this, which now almost exclusively provides a platform for masses of undereducated, disenfranchised, and unfortunately downtrodden people to air their dirty laundry and solve personal discrepancies on national television while being shouted at by a self-important host. It is surprising how addictive these programs can be. However, the target demographic are actually completely unaware that they're actually engaging in an exercise to make you despise and judge other human beings in a very superficial manner. We have perpetual advertising and marketing hitting us at all angles, forcing us into submission of mainstream materialism and superficial wants. Not only does this delude us into thinking that the purchasing of these products will make us happy, but it also creates a division method that is used to cause people to believe that they are less than what they actually are, purely because they may not own a particular product. Another use for this advertising is to control society by means of filling their heads and their stomachs with unhealthy garbage. This not only ensures society will be gradually stupefied, but also ensuring their addiction to said products, all the while being distracted from addressing the important things in life. In the times of the Roman Empire, remember they had what was known as bread and circuses? Well, today we have a similar thing, junk food and reality TV. We have the mainstream media pumping incentives for fear and separation into our minds 24/7. False flag terror attacks, outbreaks of spurious diseases, and cultural violence are created for the very purpose of keeping you scared of anything and everything. God forbid if we, the human race, would live our lives without fear of being blown to bits by an Islamic terrorist, catching a fatal virus, or getting mugged and stabbed by a delinquent wearing a hoodie, that we might actually want to grow and learn and hence progress as a species. Just a thought. Thank you. We have politicians in charge. It's one of my favourite slides. We have politicians in charge where it is patently obvious that they haven't the first clue about how to actually make real changes. That's besides the fact that they have no interest in change. Regardless of this fact, because their dealings and associated issues have been branded as political, they are held up as the experts on how to manage things, while the rest of us feel that we would be out of our depth, right? We respect and perpetuate blind submission to perceived authority, whether it is the coercive actions of the agents within the so-called criminal justice system, or parents, teachers, carers, even down to the pieces of paper that we get pushed through our letterboxes. We've been groomed into thinking that we are governed by unthinking and unquestioning obligation. This enables slavery in all its forms to flourish right in our faces and in our hearts, and we don't collectively resist it. We deal with criminals by way of a form of punishment, by a form of violence known as punishment, whether we murder them by electrocuting them or using deadly drugs, or whether we incarcerate them, forcing them to associate with violent people for years on end. We tend to avoid addressing the root cause of why any crime is committed, and not surprisingly, we exacerbate and perpetuate the entire problem. We have religious zealots like these, claiming that they are speaking a universal truth from an all-powerful, all-knowing and righteous, yet strangely homophobic deity. This form of religious extremism promotes hate and division amongst human beings and demonstrates part of the worst results of what subjective religious doctrine can really do. We suffer a fear of technology for what it could do to us and what it can do better than us. Mostly, we have Hollywood to thank for creating the fallacy that artificial intelligence will be inherently malevolent. And as such, we feel fearful of technology on the whole. This is also due to the exponential growth and development of technology, which threatens the cohesion of the human labour force, leaving us obsolete as workers. We as a culture have willfully abandoned, or maybe never truly discovered, the methods of proper and altruistic communication. We spend our lives enforcing our conveyances upon one another instead of sharing information with one another. This, in combination with us immaturely bringing our emotions and ego into the matter, results in logical fallacies and intellectually dishonest behaviour. No wonder we feel like we can't get along, right? Similar to our ineffective outgoing communications, we also suffer an inefficiency of received communications. For example, we choose to be offended whenever we encounter information that calls into question what we hold dear. Now, this serves a multiple purpose, from derailing the point at hand to shooting the messenger, as it were. This is because we've been groomed into holding static information and, in fact, incorporating it into our very identities. And when proven wrong, we take offence. We have a skewed and illogical stance in our values that is known as the entitlement of opinion. Granted, Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, or the ICCPR, states that, and I quote, "Everyone shall have the right to hold opinions without interference," end quote. However, this does not take into consideration how opinions change over time, mainly due to transforming information. This has resulted in a red herring argument, so to speak, that people seem to feel entitled to any opinion and as such should be respected and followed. We have made both sex and nudity a taboo. We demand that sexual behaviour and nudity should be shielded from the glare of our children out of fear that we would be corrupting or destroying their innocence. We delay for as long as possible informing our children exactly how procreation happens. And even then, we fill the explanations with euphemisms and cowardly fairy tales. And with this formula, we still wonder why we have problems such as sex crime and the development of what we call perverted behaviour. We have generated this strange value in our culture around apathy, being considered as cool. Very much like in school, the popular kids picked on the smart kids. Apparently, it's not cool to care about things that are going on in the world. It shows up how everyone else doesn't care as much or can't understand as much. And so let's make it a bad thing to care and a good and, in fact, cool thing not to care, right? And we wonder why we still haven't solved the problems in society. Thank you. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, let's get you involved in this, okay? Let's delve into a few of these in more detail and see what we can find. Let's start with what is known as techno-fear. When you see automation making human labour obsolete or redundant, should you feel negatively about this? Who thinks so? Hands up. Good point. And who doesn't think so? Yeah. A reaction of negativity is understandable, even condonable to a point, because that machine has just taken your job and hence your purchasing power, which means your ability to monetarily provide for yourself and your family. However, is that really the case? Is it empirical that machine automation ruins our lives? Or is it something else? Is it maybe only because we have a system that basically fueled by human labour and hence the perpetual circulation of currency? In essence, have we made the mistake of allowing technology to evolve to the point of eradicating the need for a human labour force and hence the end of our lives as we know it? Or have we made the mistake of creating a system that is now made obsolete by our application of technology? You see, ladies and gentlemen, when we automate, we raise efficiency, productivity, speed and accuracy, along with a lot more. Isn't that what we're supposed to be heading towards anyway? Isn't that what we developed technology for in the first place? So it follows that we have to let go of certain things in order to move on to that next level. So we realise that capitalism is actually a dead weight. I'm sorry, it has to go. It's holding us back. Thank you. Next question. Is the use of politics and hence politicians the optimal method of solving problems? Who thinks so? Fantastic, good answer. And who doesn't think so? Nice one. We should think about a politician's true abilities. Are they capable of truly solving problems at their root? Or is their only weapon the patchwork method? Let's take an example of an ant infestation in your kitchen. Should we spend the rest of our lives utilising the patchwork solution of stomping on them and setting traps or laws? Or should we utilise the technical solution of removing the spoiled food behind your fridge, which is causing the infestation? Now you see, is a politician capable of providing that technical solution per se? Of course not. They come from financial and legal backgrounds. They have no technical knowledge. Politics is a short-term thing. No politician has the incentive, let alone the opportunity, to care about how things will be in, say, 6 years' time. Because there will be no guarantee that they will be in a position of power by that time to have to be responsible for it. The old, I'll let the next guy take care of that mentality. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's one to wrap your brains around. Should we be entitled to our opinions? Who thinks so? A surprising number. And who doesn't think so? Okay, that's an interesting outcome there. Tell you what, how about if I were to cite the opinion that you should all die? Should I be entitled to that opinion to the point of demanding that it be followed and respected? Of course not. So, you know, why should any other opinion have any kind of authority to be held and to be right? Now, bear with me. I can already sense that some people's hairs are going up now, but just bear with me. I can fully understand that opinions are closely tied to our sense of freedom and democracy, right? But one thing I should stress is that opinions are one thing. Even having them and expressing them, fine, right? But entitling people to them is dangerous. Because it's the same reason why healthcare workers are forbidden from stating opinions on a patient's care plan. Because it's a misrepresentation of the facts. Because opinions is subjective. They are fluid and they're dependent on a person's life experience, bias, beliefs and perception. If you give people the right to an opinion, you're giving them a right to be wrong and reject facts. Now, I personally wouldn't feel safe in a world where everyone had a right to an opinion. Now, as I said, it's fine for people to have an opinion, right? But if we entitle people to it, then it eradicates the formality of opinions changing. For example, I could see you walking past a playground with a bag of sweets in your hand. I could generate the opinion that you're a paedophile. However, if I accept the fact that my opinion is merely transitory and not based on facts, then I could accept the facts of the situation that you are merely walking past a playground with a bag of sweets in your hand. Simple. Opinion is fine, but the lesson is that we need to accept that opinion is nothing more than preconceptions ahead of fact, and therefore they're completely undeserving of the grounding of entitlement. We need to recognize that in order for us to progress on this planet, as a species, we need to outgrow the value of opinion over fact. When we arrive at decisions using the scientific method, we realize that merely making them with unreliable, biased, and subjective human opinion is completely inefficient and obsolete. Thank you. And for those of you who may be feeling maybe a little off kilter by that last question, here's one for you. Is the statement of "I'm offended" an intellectually honest and logically solid position? Who thinks so? Good answer, guys, good answer. And who answered no? Nice one. Well, we need to think about exactly what it means and implies to be offended. To bring it to a closer point, what actually happens when you're offended? Nothing. So why should being offended be something that could be morally or legally legislated? The act of being offended is not like gravity. It's not objective, it's subjective. Something that offends you may not offend me. Therefore, what do we find? We find that offense is taken, not given. When someone says, "no offense," what is the general reply? None taken, right? So why do we use this logical fallacy to begin with? Why do we believe that it can hold any weight? Could it be because there has arisen a value of censorship, that we've been taught that we can have carte blanche to silence someone else, derail us, or stop a discussion, purely because they have chosen to maintain an emotional attachment to a certain issue, and not only that, but a certain view on that issue? Is that progressive? The issue of offense is that, as I've said, a subjective act. And when we consider information as nothing more than what it is, information, we stop being offended. Because we are taking the information in with no emotional attachment to a certain data set or outcome. And the last question, is punishment an adequate method to deal with so-called crime? Who thinks so? And so I take it who doesn't think so will be all the room? Oh, that's interesting. Well, we need to look a little deeper at this issue. Is it even appropriate to separate individuals who commit crimes, ergo slamming them in cells? I would answer with a huge resounding no. The very act of incarceration is actually a form of violence, and it doesn't do anything for the rehabilitation of criminals, because what kind of people will you be associating with in prison? The same kinds of people who have been conditioned into aberrant behaviours. Seriously, we as a species really need to get over ourselves in respect of how we react towards and treat criminals, in particular when it comes even to individuals who committed acts such as rape, murder, and child molestation. Currently, the common and even accepted methodology, first off, is to label them as sick or perverts or monsters, right? And many other names which are just as vicious as the crimes themselves, let's be honest. While this is completely counterproductive and surprisingly divisive, I can understand the reaction and behaviour of these people. They feel so personally affronted, disgusted, and emotionally injured by the very hearing, reading, or seeing of such an act that they project the intended hatred, will for vengeance, and hostility at anyone who committed the crime and anyone who actually doesn't feel the exact same way they do. The point is that when we label these individuals with the hateful words that we do, we are conveniently overlooking what has caused this behavior to develop in the first place. Was Ed Gein born a serial murderer? No. He was made into one by years of physical, verbal, and emotional abuse, not to mention the firebrand religious indoctrination at the hands of his mother. We need to move from punishment to positive reinforcement. We need to be looking into what has caused this behavior in the first place, not extracting our pound of flesh and perpetuating the whole problem. The reason so many commit crimes is down to how we learn and what we develop as means to get what we need. In a world where we would have what we need, what propensity is there for crime? What criminals need is the opposite of what we currently dish out to them. They actually need to be treated like human beings. Ultimately, they need what they were never given: love. Thank you. So, in conclusion, you see, ladies and gentlemen, we as humanity, we've lost our way. We are less than what we could be. We see ourselves as we like to be or how we want to be, but never how we need to be, for what we need to do, for where we need to go. We've gorged ourselves for far too long on the values of materialism, apathy, and hostility. We are uncomfortable at looking a little deeper and seeing what lies at the bottom of everything. We're scared to look because we created a fear of what we would probably find. However, what we're really doing is holding ourselves back from our true potential, which is nothing but positivity and creativity. You see, that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. We are human beings, and as I like to say during my megaphone activism, you are all beautiful, unique, wonderful, and creative human beings. However, on the downside of that, we are capable of anything given sufficient conditioning. However, that does not give us dominion over the lands and seas that we live on. So this brings us back to the question I mentioned in the beginning. How do we get from here to there? Well, back when I was in secondary school, one of the English classrooms was decorated with pieces of paper on the walls with inspirational quotes on them. One of the quotes said, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And this is absolutely true. So what is our first step, as it were? It is our change in values, our change of thought and consciousness. It all starts right here, in yourself. You must change first because of that initial spark within you to move towards better values and behaviors. Or as Mohandas Gandhi said, we must be the change we want to see in the world. It all starts with you. And from there, instead of simply talking the talk, you start to walk the walk. Not only does this improve your own life and mind, but it radiates to everyone around you and influences and inspires them to also seek the change within themselves. You see, this doesn't just imply being better people, but it also implies that by becoming the change, we are also becoming our own leaders, more mature, as free-thinking and self-governing human beings that do not need to be governed or provided for by any other person that we are taught holds more authority than ourselves. We would truly become adults, because an adult guides themselves. A child is in need of protection and sustenance because they haven't grown to do that for themselves. Let us grow up. When it comes to the technology and methods that we have, and thus the infrastructure we can build and the things we can do for a resource-based economic model, allow me to be blunt. These things are meaningless, irrelevant, useless, and in fact dangerous if they are not applied using the correct values. You see, currently we are clinging on to obsolete and even draconian values, while armed with nanotech weaponry the size of a marble that can obliterate all life on Earth. Do we currently hold the right mindset for the capabilities we have right now? Of course not. So let's evolve up here and in here first. I will end my presentation today with a quote from Chinmoy Kumar Gose. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Thank you.